When one of our customers placed this cake order, they provided an inspiration picture for the cake and they explained that they wanted as minimal food dye as possible on this cake, which wasn't a huge problem because the inspiration cake was already mostly white to begin with. And the majority of the color that was on the cake was fairly light, except for the strawberry details on this cake, which would obviously have quite a bit of red food coloring in them. So we talked over a few different options that they could do to replace the food coloring on the cake, but ultimately they decided that just those details of the cake were fine to be colored with the food dye as long as the rest of the cake was mostly white. When decorating custom cakes like this, it is actually really hard to get completely dye-free because you don't realize even in random ingredients that there's food dyes snuck in there. And once you start reading the ingredient labels, you realize how many products actually have them in there when you don't even think they do. So it does make it a little tricky when customers have requests like this, but we're always willing to work with them on things like that. Even for a light color like this blue that I'm using now, it still takes quite a bit of dye to color it to that level. And they do make more natural dyes, but they're usually quite a bit more expensive and aren't quite as strong. So it takes a lot more to get the color that you're looking for. At least that's been my experience so far. If anybody has a natural dye brand that they really like, let me know because I'd be willing to look into that. When I was mixing the red for the strawberries, I was trying to do it with as minimal dye as possible, and then I ended up just adding as much in as I normally would because really, if you don't put enough red in, it's just pink, and I didn't want pink strawberries on the cake, so we just went with the full red. Once I had those piped on the cake, I went back with a spatula to smooth them out a little bit, and then I added the little white seed details and the green vines and leaves to connect them to the ruffle that was above them. And then kind of continued the same design in little spots along the top of the cake as well, just to bring that visually up to the top. And this is how it turned out. I love that it looks a little more simple, but still has those pops of color on it.